Just when you thought things couldn't get any sadder for Paradox, they fired Brian Bitsoda, they fired a creative director, they've brought in Mr. Ubisoft, Assassin's Creed Fixer Man to rush this game out, likely before it's ready, but that wasn't enough for them because Kara Allison, she's no longer working on Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines 2, she's gone. Was she fired? I believe she was, and I want to talk about why I believe that's the case, and also talk about the state of this project, so let's jump in. Hi, Estelden here. I'd actually heard Kara was off the project a few days ago thanks to various forums and Discord, but it's only been quite recently that Kara Allison herself has confirmed the news. So Hardsuit Labs, the studio behind Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, at least the sequel, they're in Seattle. Meanwhile, Kara, she is back in Scotland. She's not even in the country anymore. The state of this game would honestly be hilarious to me if it wasn't for the fact they were screwing the follow-up to one of the best RPGs of all time. Now, it's a little ironic I say that, because if we go back, say, 6 months ago, and I told a bunch of people that Kara Allison had been fired, a lot of people would have considered it good news, possibly even great news. She openly antagonized fans, she was responsible seemingly for things like the trigger warnings they wanted to include, and she seemed to just have politics at the forefront of her mind and not really the Bloodlines legacy, if I'm being honest. I want to clarify quickly, it is not confirmed she was actually fired, because in her words, she left in September to work on other things. At face value, I just find that hard to believe. She'd worked on it with Brian, a supposed hero of hers, he gets fired, she doesn't, but by coincidence, she decides to move on to other things a few months later. Sounds like a bit of a tall tale to me, and if I was looking at it objectively, I'd probably assume that her and Hardsuit Labs came to an understanding for PR reasons. They don't want to be coming out and saying, yeah, look again, I know we gave you the bad news a few months ago, now we've got some more news. We fired someone else, Kara's going. I mean, that would have alienated the only fans they've got left. The only people I can find who still have hope for this game are the people who say, oh, Kara's gonna fix anything, we love Kara. No, she's not there, she's gone. And obviously we've got no proof that was definitely the case, but in these scenarios in the video game industry, we're never gonna know for sure, so I think it's more productive to use our brains to figure out what happened. So assuming Kara was fired, the wheels have well and truly fallen off at Paradox. When Brian was fired, I was angry. I was disgusted at the treatment of the original creator of this series, but with Kara, I'm sure she'll be able to take her political stuff somewhere else. It's not a great loss to everyone. Where the loss really is with the state of the project, because if they're continuing to move people on, I'm starting to wonder if Paradox are just ready to call it quits altogether. I don't think they're going to outright cancel Bloodlines 2, but what I do think is that they might start to disassemble the team. It's almost certain this game is in an absolutely shocking state. And even a few months ago, I was flabbergasted with the amount of people making excuses for the game, whether it was on YouTube, Reddit, Facebook. People were really adamant that anyone questioning the state of the title were just man babies or something to that effect. I can say comfortably that I cannot think of a successful video game project that started axing core team members who were also involved in the marketing and the initial pitch of the game this far out from launch, because I imagine that with the delay, we're at least another 5 or 6 months until this game actually comes out. If this had have all started like a week or two before it was due to come out, then I would have said, yeah, like this is unethical, but I can maybe see them doing it to cut costs if all the narrative stuff was written, but there's no chance that's what's going on here, because the PR, it's going to have killed any hype for this game. I would not be shocked by any means that Paradox have lost more pre-orders in like the last 2 or 3 months than they've gained them. And keep in mind that the more recent negative reception to this title, it's all come about because of like internal strife. It hasn't been because we've gotten new footage and it looks crap. We haven't even seen the game. They don't have anything to show. And I know there was some footage ages ago, but that is not acceptable for the end release of the game. We've just had nothing recent, nothing to suggest this game is moving along. It's all just come to a standstill. I honestly think that they're trying to cut these costs really, really early because Paradox are planning to shut Hardsuit Labs down. Or at least they're going to seriously restructure them for the future when this is all over. And as much as I think Kara Allison is a bit of a stain on the video game world, I will say that I don't think the game's overall problems relate to the narrative decisions. I mean, they might have fucked it up, the writing probably would have been substantially worse than the original, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if that were the case, but the issues, I think, they lie much deeper than all of that. If we flip that on its head for a minute and we say, no, the game's fine, it's all the narrative designers, they're all toxic, they're causing the problems. If that was the case, then surely Hardsuit Labs would have no issues showing off more combat, showing us environments, exploration, all those sorts of things to keep us confident. But no, they've got nothing, and they are way out of their depth trying to make an RPG. Let's keep in mind that this studio, they've never made a role-playing game before, and given they hired Kara, I mean, it might have actually been Brian who hired her, but someone within the studio, someone in a more producer-like role, they should have stepped in that case and said, hey, look, Brian, look, you're great, but Kara's got no experience in RPGs. Maybe she can do a more junior role and actually earn her stripes. But instead she appeared to be in a pretty senior position from the outset, despite not having any credible experience in this genre. What that tells me is they would have applied the same rules and logic with the rest of the staff, and no one over there seems to really know what they're doing, at least as a group. They might be able to make games, I'm sure there's some great artists, there's some talented people, but they just don't know how to make an RPG. I mean, that's pretty clear. The way the interviews with Brian and co have gone over the years, it really suggested they were trying to make a reasonably in-depth RPG, and you just can't do that if you've got no idea what you're doing. If you look at studios that have made good starts in the industry, I think of guys like Black Isle Studios, Obsidian, BioWare. And what I can tell you is that they were created by people with a deep love of pen and paper RPGs. They knew all of these systems like the back of their hand. And so translating similar systems, similar rules into video games would have still been extremely hard, but they would have had that knowledge base to work with. When I look at Hardsuit Labs, I don't see that sort of passion. I see a studio that was given this IP and told to go and make an RPG. That is what I feel Paradox have done. Paradox were rubbing their hands together at the thought of exploiting this incredible IP, this incredible legacy that Bloodlines had, and they put it in the hands of either incompetent or at best inexperienced people. And now they're going to rush this game out anyway, and they're going to pay the price. Because consumers have turned on them. I remember when I initially saw the reaction to this game, and yeah, look, some people were skeptical, but there were a lot of people who were adamant this was going to be good. They were defending it anywhere you looked. Those people have disappeared for the most part, and with the news of Kara being gone, they're nowhere to be seen. If they're really just trying to cut costs, then I wouldn't be surprised if by the end they've got like a skeleton crew working on this game just to ship it out, and then they do their whole restructure, or they just close Hardsuit down, and they're going to rub their hands of everything. And the saddest part is they're going to tarnish the Bloodlines name just to try and recoup some of their sunken cost. Pathetic. But I want to be fair here, because I can appreciate that with some of this I am guessing, things might not be as dire as we thought, you never know. But I'll tell you what, the reason I feel this way, primarily, is because quite recently there is a review that's gone up on Glassdoor reviewing Hardsuit Labs. And if you aren't familiar with this website, it is a place where people can leave anonymous reviews about their employer. And there's a lot of interesting stuff on there. And this particular review, it may have actually been written by Kara herself. I wouldn't be shocked, because the timing really adds up. It's from someone who left in September, seemingly. And if it's not Kara, it means they're firing other people, so it's no good no matter what way you look at it. So this is Hardsuit Labs' Glassdoor page. So as you can see, there's 15 reviews. We go down, there's a little bit of a shill review from the looks coolest people here. Current employee, so it really just cannot be trusted. I do know pretty much for a fact that a lot of businesses, a lot of companies, they do have their employees put Glassdoor reviews up here to make them look a bit better and kind of close the gap, 5 stars, compared to this 1 star that you can see here. And this is actually the review that I think may be Kara, and a lot of people I'm saying who've read this review online, they do think the same. It's from the 14th of September, and it's from a senior game designer. I can't imagine they would have fired or gotten rid of too many senior game designers within the month of September, so look, it might not have been her, it might have been Kai, it might have even been Brian Mitsoda himself, who knows, but there's someone here who's not happy at all. So if we go through, we get the pros. It's a development studio you can work at in Seattle. I mean, that's not really anything to do with Hardsuit, so we're not really off to a great start. Pizza, alright, so we're not really at the meat of things. And if the CEOs can't understand your work, you'll be able to finish it without constant questions. So that tells you the management doesn't really know what's going on, they don't know what they're doing. And none of the pros, aside from this diverse studio, progressive studio, which has nothing to do with the games themselves, so there's nothing really here going for them. Now this is really what made me laugh, because according to this person, they've read the recent news, or we all need to read the recent news, and it's all confusing to the staff members. So the staff members don't even know what's going on at their own studio. All of this politics, all of this stuff that's going on, office politics, they're not really in the know. It seems the people in the media, the people talking about it, they've got the same knowledge as the people actually working within the building at Hardsuit Labs. So that's really sad to me. And you can see that's poorly trained, so again, this comes down to the fact that Hardsuit Labs, they don't really have any understanding of the RPG genre. They're making it up as they go along. They're cheap on one hand, wasteful on the other, so it's just more mismanagement. Paradox themselves, they don't have enough experience with RPGs. What they've done is they've had their niche, because if you're a fan of Paradox, you probably know all of these games that come out and have a great reception. I believe it's Crusader Kings 3. Not something I myself actively play, but I know a lot of people love it, and it's an experience you can't really get anywhere else. So Paradox have almost had a little bit of a monopoly there, where they can get away with shady practices, all those microtransactions, the big season passes, all of that. They've been putting those in all of these niche games, and they've tried to then move over to something else. And I suppose you could say the CRPG or the more in-depth RPG is a niche genre these days. I mean, we're getting Cyberpunk in a month's time, and I can't imagine it's going to have that much in common with CRPGs, if we're being honest. But it is a bit of a niche genre, and Paradox have tried to step their foot in, dip their toe in, and it hasn't worked. They've mismanaged everything. This staff member who's now gone seemingly feels the same. Look at this, they hire developers and they put no trust in them, especially game design. No idea how to make an RPG, and it's shown for the past few years. This just backs up everything that I've been thinking, and a lot of other people have been thinking as well. The game design needs a fresh restart, Jesus Christ. So, yeah, they've got no clue what's going on. There's probably barely a game there. And then you've got Paradox is half in, half out, but all trouble. So they've probably, I would imagine that like the senior managers at Paradox, some of them almost don't want to touch this thing. They don't want to be the ones who are accountable for this absolute screw up, this fuck up. And they're just kind of half-assing it as they go, and they've probably made that decision now to just completely wipe their hands of all of this and just be done with it. And this person's given some advice to management. Not as bad as it used to be is not a good answer to issues. Oh my god. Get through this project and scatter to the winds. Maybe start smaller studios that do shooter clones and shooter DLC. Yeah, so that is basically the gist of it. They have no business making an RPG. They're not experienced enough. And if the only thing this person, this is why I thought it might be Kara, but I imagine the culture there is very much like this. The only positive thing they've had to say is it's quite diverse and you can get pizza. So Paradox, you've completely screwed up this IP. And I don't really blame Hardsuit Labs either, because look, they're at the mercy of Paradox. They probably had no choice. And I mean, they could have done better with the staff hirings, but there's only so much they could really do here. So at the end of the day, I blame Paradox. Whether it's Brian Mitsoda they want to fire, Kara Ellison, I really don't care. At the end of the day, it's their responsibility, and they fucked this up. And when the game eventually releases to, I would imagine, a really, really vicious reception from fans who are disgusted at what they've done with the Bloodlines IP, they deserve all the hate they're going to get. And I really advise anyone who has pre-ordered this game to consider getting your refund, putting the money back in your pocket, because Paradox don't deserve it. They're charging a ludicrous amount of money for an unfinished product. They're talking about expansions, DLCs, season passes, all of that. They cannot even get the base game out. So at the very least, if you've got a pre-order, please at least make it just the base game. Don't give them money for the DLC packages and all that, because I think they're still going to release them, but they're going to be in such a bare-bones state that they're not even worth it. They're just going to release them to justify and satisfy, I suppose, those pre-orders, so they're not up for a lawsuit. So this game, it's a complete train wreck. I never thought it would have gone this far, but this is pretty much it. So Vampire the Masquerade, Bloodlines, in a really, really sad state, and I hope that one day Brian Mitsoda or someone else gets to rectify all this, because Paradox, you're a fucking joke, and I've had enough. Hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please comment, like, and subscribe. I'll see you on the next one. Thanks very much, and bye-bye.